I turned down the family vacation. My sister always sticks me with her twins. I quietly slipped away at the airport cafe. The next morning, my phone blew up, hundreds of messages. You destroyed our trip. Can you imagine your own sister, your family, looking you dead in the eye and declaring, you ruined our entire vacation, when all you did was try to save your mother's health? Because that's the brutal truth I faced, and it changed everything. I'm Olivia, I'm 29, and I never thought I'd become the villain of our family trip to Maine. But those bitter words, especially from my sister Melissa, still echo in my mind. Family, it turns out, can be your greatest comfort or your deepest wound. Growing up in our middle-class Connecticut home, the dynamics between me, Melissa, and our parents, Diane and Richard, were set early. Melissa, for years older than me, was always the golden child. She had this magnetic personality, charming everyone she met. My parents, especially my dad, just gravitated towards her. I don't blame them, really. Melissa lights up a room. She's the kind of person who makes friends in the grocery line. While she was winning swim meets and being crowned queen, I was the responsible one. I'd help Mom with dinner, iron Dad's shirts, and maintain a steady 3.8 GPA that nobody ever really celebrated. It wasn't that my parents didn't love me. They did. But there was always this unspoken expectation. I would be the reliable one, the one who wouldn't cause trouble or demand attention. As adults, these roles only hardened. Melissa drifted through 3 college majors, all funded by our parents without a peep. Then she spent a year finding herself in Europe, also with their financial support. Meanwhile, I worked part-time through college, graduated with an accounting degree, and immediately landed a respectable job in Hartford. My achievements were acknowledged with quiet nods, never big celebrations. The last 2 years had been tough. Mom's health was deteriorating from type 2 diabetes. Daily meds, constant blood sugar monitoring, doctor visits when things went south. Dad tried to help, but he was overwhelmed. So, naturally, the responsibility fell to me. I researched her condition, organized her medications, drove her to appointments. Melissa would call occasionally from Boston, always busy with her marketing job and social life. Her concern felt genuine but fleeting. She'd ask about Mom, then immediately pivot to her latest dating drama or work conflict. The idea for this Maine vacation came from Melissa during one of our rare family dinners 3 months ago. Mom had been having a particularly difficult time, and Melissa, with her usual flair, declared we all needed a change of scenery to reset. We should rent that cabin the Andersons went to, she said, her eyes sparkling. It's right on the lake, totally peaceful. Mom could rest, Dad could fish, and we could just relax together. The idea took hold instantly. Dad nodded enthusiastically, and Mom's eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. That sounds wonderful, she said, reaching for Melissa's hand. I've been so cooped up lately. I hesitated. Summer was my firm's busiest time. A week off meant working double before and after. And Mom's health, were there medical facilities nearby? Would the cabin be accessible? But seeing the hope on Mom's face, I kept my concerns to myself. Great, it's settled, Melissa declared, already on her phone. I'll book it next week. But as weeks turned into months, the actual planning, of course, fell to me. Melissa sent links, but never followed through. Dad talked about fishing, but never looked into permits. Mom was excited, but tired easily. So I took over. Lists, booking, researching medical facilities, planning diabetes-friendly menus, arranging my time off. 2 days before we were supposed to leave, Melissa called me in a panic. Olivia, I totally forgot to request vacation days. Can you call the cabin and see if we can move the trip back a week? My grip tightened on the phone. Melissa, that's impossible. Everything is set. I had to fight for this time off, and Mom's doctor appointments are scheduled around these dates. But I really want to come, she whined. Can't you figure something out? After a tense conversation, she finally agreed to take unpaid time off, making it sound like an enormous sacrifice. Part of me felt guilty, even though it was entirely her own doing. The night before our departure, I methodically packed a separate bag for all of Mom's medications, labeled with dosage instructions. Maps of the route, locations of the nearest hospitals and pharmacies, restaurants with dietary options. I was exhausted, but hopeful. Despite the planning stress, I genuinely looked forward to quality family time. Maybe this trip would help us connect. Maybe Dad would finally notice my contributions. Maybe Melissa would finally step up. With these hopeful thoughts, I finally fell asleep, dreaming of peaceful lake views and harmonious family meals. Little did I know, the reality would be dramatically different. This vacation would become a turning point in how I saw my family and myself. My alarm jolted me awake at 5:30 a.m. We planned to leave by 8 o'clock to beat traffic. I splashed cold water on my face, chasing away the fatigue from a restless night. By 6:15, I double-checked Mom's medication bag, confirmed all labels, and placed her detailed schedule in a bright red folder. Impossible to miss. At 7 o'clock, I drove to my parents' house. Mom greeted me at the door in her travel outfit. "Good morning, sweetheart," she hugged me. "I've been up since 5, too excited to sleep." Dad was in the kitchen, engrossed in a fishing magazine. "Morning, Olivia," he grunted, barely looking up. "Ready for vacation mode?" I smiled, organizing the cooler with drinks and snacks, including sugar-free options for Mom. The clock ticked past 7:30. No Melissa. Dad checked his watch with increasing frequency as 8 o'clock approached. At 8:15, he finally called her. I could hear Melissa's voice, bright and unapologetic. "Just finishing packing. Give me 30 minutes tops." Dad sighed but didn't protest. "All right, we'll wait. Drive safe." I bit my tongue. Melissa lived 15 minutes away. I used the extra time to review our route and check chargers for phones and Mom's blood glucose monitor. Melissa finally breezed in at 9:10, designer sunglasses perched on her head, an oversized tote slung over her shoulder. "Sorry, everyone. Couldn't decide what to bring, then realized I needed coffee." She held up a takeout cup. Dad took her bags without comment, carefully rearranging everything I'd meticulously packed to accommodate her excessive luggage. Mom just smiled indulgently, happy we were all finally together. By 9:30, we were on the road, more than an hour and a half behind schedule. Melissa immediately claimed the front passenger seat. I get carsick in the back. This left me in the rear with Mom. I didn't mind. It gave me a chance to keep an eye on her. The drive north was beautiful, suburban landscapes giving way to rural scenery. Dad played classic rock, Melissa chattered about her friends and work drama. I gazed out the window, allowing myself to relax a little. Around noon, we stopped at a roadside diner. Chrome fixtures, vinyl booths. Mom checked her blood sugar while I scanned the menu. "The grilled chicken salad should be good for you, Mom," I suggested. "Light on the dressing." Melissa rolled her eyes. "God, Olivia, let Mom eat what she wants for once. We're on vacation." "It's fine," Mom interjected quickly. "The salad sounds perfect." When our food arrived, Melissa immediately complained about her burger. I asked for medium rare, and "This is definitely medium well." She pouted, poking it with her fork. She called the server over, demanding a replacement, delaying us another 15 minutes. I noticed Mom looking tired, her face pale. "Did you take your new medication?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "Just a little tired from sitting so long. I'll be fine once we get back on the road." After lunch, we continued north. Melissa dozed in the front. I kept Mom company, playing word games. The scenery grew more spectacular, dense forests, sparkling lakes. We crossed into Maine mid-afternoon, and anticipation built. Despite the delays and drama, the vacation still held promise. Around 4:30 p.m., Dad turned onto a narrow road that wound through pine forests. After miles of remote terrain, we rounded a bend and saw it. The cabin. It was even more beautiful than the photos. Perched on a gentle slope overlooking a vast, clear lake, with a wraparound deck and huge windows reflecting the water. Tall pines, a small dock, a rowboat. "Oh my," Mom breathed, her fatigue momentarily forgotten. "It's perfect." Even Melissa sat up straighter, putting away her phone for the first time in hours. Wow. The Andersons weren't exaggerating. This place is gorgeous. Dad parked. We all stretched. The air smelled of pine and clean water, cooler and fresher. For a moment, we stood together, taking in the view, the peaceful silence broken only by bird song and lapping water. That brief moment of family unity was powerful. I felt a surge of optimism. Maybe this was exactly what we needed. I took charge of unloading, directing Dad and Melissa with bags. The cabin's interior was just as impressive. Knotty pine walls, comfortable furniture, a stone fireplace, a kitchen with lake views. I called a room with a lake view. Melissa announced immediately. Dad nodded. Your mother and I will take the master. Olivia, you're okay with this small room in the back, right? It wasn't really a question. I nodded, carrying my bag to the smallest bedroom overlooking the driveway. It was perfectly adequate, clean, cozy. I unpacked quickly, then set up Mom's medication station on the kitchen counter, bottles, glucose monitor, my schedule. By early evening, we were settled. Dad fired up the gas grill. We ate simple grilled chicken and vegetables. As the sun set, the lake turned molten gold, then deep purple. This was a wonderful idea, Mom said, squeezing Melissa's hand. Thank you for suggesting it. Melissa beamed, soaking up the credit, never mentioning my weeks of planning. But in that peaceful moment, with my family around me, I didn't mind. The vacation was off to a good start, despite the hiccups. As stars appeared, I allowed myself to hope for the family connection I'd been craving. I woke with the sunrise, my body still on work schedule. Soft morning light filled the small bedroom. I lay still, listening to the cabin's unfamiliar sounds, creaking wood, distant birdsong, gentle lapping water. By 7 a.m., I was in the kitchen, coffee brewing, breakfast underway. Whole grain pancakes with fresh berries, Mom's favorite, perfect for her diet if she limited the syrup. The cabin was well stocked. I'd brought her specialty items. Mom joined me around 7:30, looking rested and energized. Something smells wonderful, she said, accepting the coffee I handed her. You didn't have to go to all this trouble, Olivia. It's no trouble, I replied truthfully. There was something calming about cooking here, with the lake in view. Did you sleep well? Better than I have in months, she admitted. Something about the air here. Dad appeared shortly after, fishing clothes on, eager to try the lake. He kissed Mom, poured coffee. These pancakes for everyone, Olivia? I nodded. I thought we could all eat together before heading out. I found a trail map yesterday of beginner-friendly path loops around the lake. About 2 hours. Perfect before it gets too hot. Sounds great, Dad agreed. I noticed the boat has fishing gear. Thought I'd try my luck after the hike. We discussed plans the night before. Breakfast at 8 o'clock, hike by 9 o'clock. But as 8:30 approached, Melissa hadn't appeared. Mom set aside pancakes. Dad checked his watch. Should I go wake her? I asked. Dad shook his head. Let her sleep. She works hard and needs her rest. I bit back a response about how we all worked hard. Instead, I cleaned the kitchen, wrapping Melissa's portion for later. At 9:15, still no Melissa. Dad grew impatient. Maybe we should just head out. She can catch up. Mom looked torn. She'll be disappointed to miss the hike. Let's wait a little longer. We compromised by getting ready, water bottles, sunscreen, map, the small first aid kit I'd packed. By the time we were prepared, it was nearly 10 o'clock and the morning's coolness was giving way to summer heat. We'll need to shorten the route, I said, studying the map. It's getting too hot for the full loop, especially for Mom. Just as we were about to leave, Melissa finally emerged, yawning, stretching in pajamas. Morning, everyone, she said casually, as if we hadn't been waiting for 2 hours. We were about to leave for the hike, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Melissa blinked. Oh, right. The hike. Sorry, I completely forgot. Give me 15 minutes. 15 minutes stretched to 30. Melissa showered, changed, her hair perfectly styled despite the upcoming physical activity. By then, it was nearly 10:45 and the temperature had risen significantly. Well, that's not fair, I heard her grumble. I wanted to see the lookout point mentioned in the guidebook. We can try again tomorrow if we start on time, I suggested, avoiding her gaze. The abbreviated hike was still pleasant, winding through fragrant pine forests, opening to lake views. Mom moved slowly, but steadily. I stayed close, watching for fatigue. Dad ranged ahead with Melissa, their conversation punctuated by her bright laughter. About halfway, Mom's pace slowed, her breathing labored. "Let's take a break," I suggested, guiding her to a fallen log. She sank down gratefully. "Just need to catch my breath. It's been a while since I've walked this much." I handed her water, discreetly checking for other symptoms. Her face was flushed, but not alarmingly so. "How do you feel otherwise? Any dizziness?" "I'm fine, Olivia," she assured me, drinking eagerly. "Just out of shape. Don't worry so much." Dad and Melissa had noticed our stop and doubled back. "Everything okay?" Dad asked, his brow furrowed. "Just taking a short rest," Mom replied before I could speak. "Enjoying the scenery." The rest of the hike was slower, with more breaks. By the time we returned to the cabin, it was past noon and genuinely hot. Mom went to lie down, insisting she was just tired. I checked her blood sugar, slightly elevated, but not dangerously. Dad went fishing. Melissa announced she was sunbathing. I used the time to prepare a light lunch for when Mom woke, and to plan the next day with more realistic timing. Around 2 p.m., we gathered for lunch on the deck. Mom looked refreshed after her nap. The morning's tension seemed to have dissipated. Dad proudly showed pictures of a small bass he'd caught. "I thought we could try that seafood restaurant in town for dinner," I suggested. "Great reviews and options for Mom's diet." "Actually," Melissa interjected, "I met some people while sunbathing. Local guys with a boat. They recommended a different place, the Lobster Trap. Best seafood for miles." "Did you check if they have menu options for diabetics?" I asked. Melissa rolled her eyes. "Not everything has to revolve around dietary restrictions, Olivia. I'm sure they have salads or something." Dad predictably sided with Melissa. "The Lobster Trap sounds great. Good to get local recommendations." I let it go, making a mental note to check the menu online. Mom caught my eye, giving a small shrug that said, "It's not worth arguing about." After lunch, Melissa disappeared, emerging an hour later in a new outfit, makeup redone. "By the way," she announced casually, "I might not join you all tomorrow for the lighthouse tour. The guys I met invited me out on their boat." "But we planned this together," Mom said, disappointment in her voice. "I was looking forward to all of us seeing the lighthouse." "I know, Mom, but how often do I get to go boating with cute local guys? You understand, right?" Melissa's tone was wheedling, the same one she'd used successfully throughout childhood to get her way. "I guess so," Mom conceded. "Just be careful with strangers, honey." I couldn't keep quiet any longer. "Melissa, we came here for family vacation. We've only been here one day, and you're already making separate plans." "Don't be so controlling, Olivia," Melissa snapped. "Just because you have no social life doesn't mean I have to be glued to the family 24/7. "That's enough," Dad intervened, but his tone was much milder than if I had spoken to Melissa that way. "Melissa can spend one day doing her own thing. We'll still have plenty of family time." The exchange left a sour taste in my mouth. As we prepared for dinner, I caught Melissa texting rapidly, a small smile playing on her lips. She was already mentally checked out, and we'd barely begun. The Lobster Trap was touristy, with long waits and a limited menu. Mom struggled to find suitable options, settling for dry, overcooked fish. Melissa dominated dinner with stories about her job and friends, barely asking about anyone else. Dad encouraged her, laughing at her anecdotes, while Mom smiled tiredly and picked at her food. I sat quietly, observing the familiar family dynamics playing out. Melissa at the center, Dad facilitating her spotlight, Mom peacekeeping, and me on the periphery. I'd hoped the change of scenery might shift these patterns, but so far, the vacation was only reinforcing them. Back at the cabin, Melissa announced she was taking a moonlight walk. "Don't wait up," she called, heading out, phone in hand. I suspected she was meeting her new friends. Dad turned on the TV. Mom settled beside him with a book. I retreated to my small bedroom, lying awake, listening to the lake's unfamiliar night sounds, wondering if I was the only one who felt the tension beneath our supposed vacation idyll. The third morning dawned bright and clear. I woke early, checked the forecast, perfect for the boat trip we'd reserved weeks ago. A local tour company offered a 3-hour cruise, minimal exertion for Mom. She'd been so excited about it. I headed to the kitchen to start breakfast, stopping briefly at Mom and Dad's closed door. Still sleeping good. Mom needed rest. I started coffee, mixed blueberry muffin batter, a recipe Mom loved. As they baked, filling the cabin with sweet aroma, I realized I hadn't heard movement from Melissa's room either. Given yesterday, I wasn't surprised. Our boat tour was scheduled for 11 a.m., plenty of time for breakfast, and the drive to the marina. Mom and Dad emerged around 8:30, drawn by the smell of coffee and fresh baking. Mom looked well-rested, her color good. I discreetly watched as she checked her blood sugar and took her morning medication. "These muffins are wonderful, Olivia," she said, selecting one. "You're spoiling us." Dad poured coffee, peered out the window. "Perfect day for boating. What time do we need to leave?" "We should head out by 10:15, I replied. "Marina's 20 minutes away. They asked us to arrive 15 minutes before departure." Dad nodded. "I'll make sure Melissa's up by 9:30. We enjoyed a pleasant breakfast on the deck, watching early morning kayakers. At 9:30, Dad knocked on Melissa's door. No answer. He knocked again, louder, then cautiously opened it. "She's not here," he said, returning to the deck, confused. "Bed hasn't been slept in." A flicker of concern crossed Mom's face. "Do you think she's okay? Should we call her?" "I'm sure she's fine," Dad said, though he immediately pulled out his phone. It went to voicemail. He left a message, reminding her about the boat tour. By 10 o'clock, still no Melissa. Her absence created a nervous atmosphere. Dad tried calling again. Same result. "Maybe she stayed with those friends she met," he suggested, clearly uncomfortable. Mom's worry was now visible. "She should have let us know. That's not like her." I refrained from pointing out that it was exactly like Melissa to do what she wanted, without considering others. Instead, I packed a small cooler with water and snacks for the boat trip. As 10:15 approached, our planned departure time, I noticed something else troubling. "Dad, where are the car keys? We should get going." Dad patted his pockets, frowning. "They should be on the hook by the door." A quick search confirmed my sinking suspicion. The keys were gone. And so was the car. Melissa had taken it without asking, without leaving a note, without considering we might need it. Dad's expression darkened. "She knows we have the boat tour today. Why would she take the car without saying anything?" The situation grew more concerning when Mom opened the refrigerator. "Olivia, didn't you put my backup insulin in here? I can't find it." A quick inventory confirmed it. Her emergency insulin was missing from its designated spot. Most of her daily meds were still on the counter, but the insulin she might need in case of a blood sugar spike was gone. With a sickening lurch, I realized it must be in the small cooler bag I'd packed for emergencies, the same bag now in the trunk of our missing car. "I need to call Melissa again," Dad said, his voice tight with anger. This time, he left a more urgent message. "Melissa, call us immediately. Mom's insulin is in the car and we need it. Plus, we're going to miss our boat reservation." The next hour was tense. We called Melissa repeatedly. Each call went to voicemail. Mom insisted she was fine for now. She'd taken her morning dose and had enough medication for the day if her blood sugar remained stable. But the missing emergency insulin was a safety concern we couldn't ignore. At 10:45, I made the decision. Cancel the boat tour. The marina was too far to walk, especially in the heat, and we couldn't risk missing the boat and losing our deposit. The cancellation fee was substantial, but there was no alternative. "I'm sorry about the tour, Mom," I said, seeing her disappointment. "Maybe we can reschedule." Mom patted my hand. "It's not your fault, dear. I'm more concerned about Melissa. This isn't responsible behavior." Dad paced the deck, alternating between calling Melissa and staring down the road, as if he could will the car to appear. His mood shifted between worry and anger. When she gets back, we're going to have a serious conversation about consideration for others, he muttered. My primary concern remained Mom's medication. While not in immediate danger, I didn't like her emergency supplies being inaccessible. After some research on my phone, I found a small pharmacy about 2 miles away. It might be possible to get a temporary emergency prescription. I'm going to see about getting to town, I announced. We need backup insulin just in case. Dad looked ready to object, probably to suggest waiting longer for Melissa, but Mom nodded firmly. That's a good idea, Olivia. Better safe than sorry. I found a water taxi service online that could pick us up from our dock and take us to the town marina. The cost was more than I wanted to spend, but this was about Mom's health. 20 minutes and a phone call later, a small motorboat pulled up to our dock. The weathered local man introduced himself as Ray. Need a lift to town, folks, he called. I helped Mom into the boat, explaining the situation. Ray was sympathetic, offering to wait while we visited the pharmacy. The boat ride was beautiful, despite the circumstances. Ray pointed out landmarks and a family of loons. At the pharmacy, I explained our situation. The pharmacist was understanding. Mom had her medical info on her phone, which helped. While they couldn't provide a full replacement, they gave us enough emergency insulin for the rest of our vacation. The cost was high without our regular insurance, but I paid without hesitation. Ray waited, as promised, and ferried us back to the cabin. As we approached our dock, I felt a mixture of relief at securing the medication and simmering frustration at the circumstances that had made it necessary. We returned to the cabin around 2:30 p.m. Still no car, no Melissa. Mom looked tired from the outing, so I helped her to the couch for a rest. Dad resumed his anxious pacing and calls. Finally, at nearly 4 p.m., we heard tires on gravel. Through the window, I saw our car pull up, Melissa at the wheel. She emerged, looking relaxed and happy, wearing a new sundress I hadn't seen before, carrying shopping bags. Dad met her at the door. "Where have you been?" he demanded, his voice tight with controlled anger. "We've been calling you for hours." Melissa looked genuinely surprised. "My phone died, and I forgot my charger. Did you need something?" "Did we need something?" I interjected, unable to contain myself. "We had a boat tour scheduled for today, the one we've been planning for weeks. You took the car without telling anyone, with Mom's insulin in it." Melissa's expression shifted from surprise to defensive irritation. How was I supposed to know her insulin was in the car? And I thought the boat thing was tomorrow. Even if it was tomorrow, you don't take our only vehicle without letting anyone know, Dad said. "We were worried about you, and we needed the car." Mom joined us, moving slowly from her rest. "Honey, my emergency medication was in the cooler in the trunk. We didn't know where you were or when you'd be back." For a brief moment, Melissa looked contrite. "I'm sorry about the insulin, Mom. I didn't know." Then her expression brightened. "But look what I found in town." She held up her shopping bags. "The cutest boutique with local crafts. I bought you a handmade scarf, Mom." The swift change of subject was classic Melissa. Deflect, distract, charm her way out of accountability. Usually it worked, especially with Dad. But this time, the issue was too serious to gloss over with gifts. "Melissa," I said firmly, "we had to hire a water taxi to get to town so we could get emergency medication. We lost our deposit on the boat tour. This isn't about forgetting or your phone dying. It's about basic consideration for others, especially Mom's health needs." "You're overreacting as usual," Melissa snapped. "Mom is fine. Nothing happened. And I said I was sorry about the insulin, but how was I supposed to know it was in the car?" "You should have asked before taking our only transportation," I insisted, "or left a note, or made sure your phone was charged. Any of those would have been the responsible thing to do." Dad stepped between us, his mediator role firmly in place. "All right, that's enough. What's done is done. Melissa, please be more thoughtful in the future. Olivia, let's move past this. We still have most of the day ahead of us." I noticed he had barely chastised Melissa while asking me to drop the subject. The familiar pattern stung, especially given the seriousness of the situation. Mom, ever the peacemaker, suggested we all have a late lunch on the deck. The meal was strained. Melissa chattered about her shopping discoveries and the charming local men who'd given her recommendations. She barely acknowledged the worry and inconvenience she'd caused. By dessert, she'd shifted the narrative entirely. She had done us a favor by discovering these local gems. After lunch, I found Mom in her room, sitting on the edge of the bed, looking more tired than she had that morning. "Are you feeling okay?" I asked, instantly concerned. "Just a bit run down from all the excitement," she assured me. But I noticed she was checking her blood sugar again. The reading was higher than ideal, likely from the stress of the day. "Let me get you some water and your medication," I offered. As I helped Mom, a wave of protective anger washed over me. This vacation was supposed to help Mom relax, not add stress that affected her health. That evening, I stayed close to Mom, monitoring her condition discreetly. Her blood sugar eventually stabilized, but the incident had left me on high alert. As I prepared dinner, I could hear Melissa on the deck, talking and laughing on her phone, presumably with her new friends. The sound grated on my nerves, but I focused on chopping vegetables with perhaps more force than necessary. Dad joined me in the kitchen. "Olivia," he began awkwardly. "I know today didn't go as planned, but try not to be too hard on your sister. She's young and enjoying her vacation." "She's 33, Dad," I replied quietly, keeping my voice low so it wouldn't carry to the deck. That's not young when it comes to basic responsibility and consideration for others. Mom could have had a serious issue today. Dad sighed. "I know, and I've spoken to her about it. But you know how she is. The more we push, the more she pushes back. Let's just try to salvage the rest of the vacation, okay?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak further, without saying something I might regret. But as I continued preparing dinner, I couldn't shake the feeling that a line had been crossed today, and that worse was yet to come. The fourth day dawned overcast, with a hint of humidity that suggested afternoon thunderstorms. The weather matched my mood, heavy with unresolved tension from yesterday. Still, I was determined to make the most of our family time, especially for Mom. I planned a picnic. Mom enjoyed outdoor meals but needed to avoid exertion. A perfect spot was a short walk from our cabin, a grassy clearing with picnic tables overlooking a quiet cove. Easy for Mom, scenic enough to feel special. By 9 a.m., I was in the kitchen preparing picnic foods, carefully including options for Mom's dietary needs: whole grain sandwiches, fresh fruit, homemade bean salad. I also packed Mom's medication, extra water, and a small first aid kit. Yesterday's experience had reinforced my caution. Dad emerged around 9:30, kissing Mom's cheek as she followed him. "Something smells great," he commented, peering over my shoulder. "Picnic lunch," I explained. "I thought we could walk to that cove. Easy walk for Mom, shaded tables." Mom smiled appreciatively. "That sounds lovely, Olivia. What can I do to help?" I gave her the simple task of wrapping sandwiches while I finished salads and packed the cooler. Dad volunteered to find picnic supplies. Once again, no sign of Melissa. After yesterday, I decided not to count on her. But Mom still knocked gently on her door around 10:15. "Melissa, honey, we're planning a picnic lunch if you'd like to join us." To my surprise, Melissa's door opened almost immediately. She was dressed, groomed, checking her phone. "A picnic? Sure, I could do that. What time are we going?" Mom looked pleased. "We were thinking around 11 o'clock. "Perfect," Melissa replied, attention still on her phone. "That gives me time to finish answering these work emails." I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe today would be smoother. Perhaps Melissa had reflected on her behavior. By 10:45, all preparations were complete. We were ready. At 11:05, Melissa finally emerged. "Ready," she announced cheerfully. Then, glancing at her phone, she added, "Oh, by the way, I hope it's okay. I invited a couple of people to join us. They're bringing some local craft beer Dad might like." My hope for a peaceful family day deflated instantly. "You invited strangers to our family picnic?" Without asking anyone, Melissa rolled her eyes. "They're not strangers. They're the guys I met the other day, Jake and Troy, and Jake's sister Aubrey is coming too. They're locals. They know all the best spots." Dad, predictably, seemed unbothered. The more the merrier, right? And craft beer sounds great. Mom looked less certain, but nodded. Of course, it's fine. I'll just grab a few more plates. I bit my tongue and recalculated the food. It would stretch to accommodate 3 more, but just barely. More concerning was the fact that Melissa had, again, made a unilateral decision affecting all of us, without consultation or consideration. We set out. I carried the heavy cooler. Dad managed the picnic basket and chairs. Mom walked slowly, but steadily. Melissa strolled beside her, chatting about local attractions her new friends had recommended. The picnic area was lovely. Grassy clearing, sturdy tables, shade trees, a spectacular view of a quiet cove where the water was so clear you could see fish. I set up our spot. Dad helped Mom get comfortable. Melissa checked her phone. They should be here any minute. They're coming by boat, said they'd dock at the small pier just down there. She pointed to a wooden dock about 50 yards away. Sure enough, within minutes, we heard a motorboat. A sleek craft pulled up, and 3 people disembarked, 2 men and a woman, all in their late 20s or early 30s. They waved enthusiastically. Melissa waved back. Introductions were made quickly. Jake was tall, sun-bleached hair, deep tan. Troy was shorter but muscular, with a trimmed beard and tattoos. Aubrey, Jake's sister, had blonde hair, short and fashionable. So great to meet Melissa's family, Jake said, shaking Dad's hand. She's told us all about you. Troy held up a 6-pack of craft beer. Local brewery. Best IPA in Maine, if you ask me. Dad looked delighted, immediately engaging Troy in conversation. Mom smiled politely as Aubrey sat beside her, asking about our cabin. Melissa hovered, clearly pleased with herself. I busied myself setting out food, trying to accommodate the extra people. I overheard snippets. Jake was a seasonal fishing guide, Troy managed vacation properties, Aubrey worked remotely as a graphic designer. The picnic started pleasantly enough. The beer was excellent, according to Dad, who was soon deep in conversation with Troy about fishing spots. Mom seemed to enjoy Aubrey's company, though I noticed she was eating less than usual, perhaps self-conscious about her dietary restrictions with strangers present. Trouble began about 20 minutes in, when Jake, watching Mom decline certain foods, asked bluntly, "Are you on some kind of special diet?" Melissa mentioned something about health issues. Mom looked uncomfortable. "Just managing diabetes," she said quietly. "Nothing to worry about." "My uncle had diabetes," Jake continued, seemingly oblivious to Mom's discomfort. "Lost a foot to it eventually. Nasty disease." Mom's face paled, and I intervened quickly. "We manage it very carefully," I said firmly. "Mom's doing great with her treatment plan." But Jake wasn't finished. "You should try this natural supplement my uncle started taking. Really helped with his blood sugar. I can get you some while you're here. My buddy sells it." "That's very kind," Mom replied diplomatically, "but I prefer to stick with my doctor's recommendations." Jake shrugged. "Suit yourself, but these pharmaceutical companies just want to keep you sick and dependent on their drugs. The natural stuff works better and doesn't have all those side effects." I felt a surge of protective anger. This stranger was giving dangerous medical advice to my mother within minutes of meeting her. Before I could respond, Melissa jumped in. "Jake owns a health food store in town," she explained, as if that qualified him to give medical advice. "He knows a lot about alternative treatments." The conversation shifted as Troy produced a flask of what he called homemade moonshine, pouring small amounts into plastic cups. Dad accepted one, as did Melissa and Aubrey. Mom and I declined politely. As the afternoon progressed, the dynamic grew increasingly uncomfortable. Jake, Troy, and Aubrey consumed most of the beer and the moonshine, growing louder and more overbearing. Melissa matched their drinking, giggling at their jokes, seeming to forget we were even there, involving us in their stories only to make fun of us. "Tell them about that time you stole your dad's car in high school, Mel," Troy encouraged, using a nickname I'd never heard anyone call my sister. Melissa launched into a story I'd never heard before, about taking Dad's car without permission at 16 to go to a party. The way she told it made it sound like a hilarious adventure, not dangerous, illegal behavior. Dad looked uncomfortable, possibly because he had no memory of this incident. "I don't remember that happening," he said when she finished. "Oh, you never knew." Melissa laughed. "I got the car back before you woke up. Mom covered for me." Mom frowned. "Melissa, that's not. Remember how you made me promise never to do it again, and we kept it our little secret." Melissa continued, cutting Mom off. "You were always covering for me." I watched Mom's face, seeing the hurt and confusion. This story was clearly fabricated. But Melissa was rewriting our family history to impress her new friends. The final straw came when Troy and Jake began tossing a frisbee nearby, becoming increasingly reckless as the alcohol affected their coordination. A wild throw from Troy sent the frisbee crashing onto our table, knocking over drinks and sending food to the ground. "Sorry about that," Troy called, not sounding particularly sorry. Neither he nor Jake made any move to help clean up the mess. As I scrambled to salvage what I could, I noticed Mom looking pale and tired. I discreetly checked her blood sugar and found it lower than it should be. She needed to eat something substantial soon. "Mom, are you feeling okay?" I asked quietly. She nodded but admitted, "I'm a bit tired, and I should probably eat something more substantial than these snacks." I turned to the group. "I think we should head back to the cabin. Mom needs to rest." Melissa frowned. "We just got here. It's barely been 2 hours." "Your mom's not looking great," Aubrey commented, more observant than her brother and friend. "Maybe you should take her back." Jake waved dismissively. "She's fine. Just give her one of those granola bars." The casual dismissal of Mom's health needs by this stranger was the last straw. I stood up, my voice firm. "We're going back now. Mom needs proper food and rest." Melissa looked embarrassed. "Olivia, stop being so dramatic." "Mom, are you really not feeling well, or is Olivia overreacting as usual?" Mom, never one to create conflict, hesitated. "I am a bit tired," she admitted. "But you can stay if you want, Melissa. Dad can help me back." "Actually," I said, looking pointedly at the mess on the table and ground, "I think we should all go. The picnic is pretty much ruined anyway." Melissa glared at me but was interrupted by Troy before she could respond. "Hey, no worries. Why don't we all head back to your cabin? We can bring the boat around to your dock. Got plenty more beer on board." Alarm bells rang in my head. The last thing Mom needed was 3 intoxicated strangers invading our cabin. "That's not necessary," I said firmly. "We have plans for the evening." "No, we don't," Melissa contradicted. "That's a great idea, Troy. You guys can come see our awesome cabin and hang out on the deck." Dad looked torn, glancing between Mom's tired face and Melissa's excited one. To my surprise, he sided with me. "I think today isn't the best day for more company. Your mother needs to rest." Melissa's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Fine, but I'm staying with my friends. I'll catch a ride with them." The walk back to the cabin was tense and silent. Dad supported Mom, who was moving more slowly than usual. I carried our picnic supplies, leaving nothing behind despite Troy's assurance that they would clean up later. Once we reached the cabin, I immediately prepared a proper meal for Mom and made sure she took her medication. While Dad helped Mom settle in, I cleaned up the remaining picnic supplies, my frustration building with every sticky container and crumpled napkin. We had planned a simple family picnic, and Melissa had turned it into a chaotic social event with strangers who disrespected our mother's health. Around 6 p.m., I heard a boat approaching our dock. Looking out, I saw the same motorboat, now carrying Melissa, Jake, Troy, and Aubrey. They were laughing loudly as they climbed onto our dock, clearly more intoxicated than they had been. Dad came to stand beside me at the window. "Looks like Melissa brought her friends back anyway," he observed, his tone unreadable. "Dad, Mom needs quiet to rest. These people were disrespectful about her health, and they're clearly drunk. We can't have them here." Dad sighed. "Let me talk to Melissa." He went out to the dock while I watched. I saw him speak to Melissa, who responded with animated gestures, suggesting disagreement. After a minute, Dad turned to Jake and said something that made the other man shrug. Then, to my dismay, Dad seemed to relent, gesturing toward the cabin in what looked like an invitation. Minutes later, the whole group tripped onto our deck. Melissa led the way, a triumphant expression on her face. Dad followed, looking resigned. Troy carried more beer, and Jake had a portable speaker already blaring music. "Mom's trying to rest," I said as they entered, keeping my voice level with effort. "We'll keep it down," Melissa promised, though the volume of her voice belied her words. "We're just going to hang out on the deck. You don't have to join us if you're going to be a buzzkill." The next hour was excruciating. From the kitchen, where I prepared a light dinner, I could hear the increasing volume of music, laughter, and conversation from the deck. Mom emerged from the bedroom, looking troubled by the noise, but unwilling to complain. When Aubrey came inside to use the bathroom, she paused by the kitchen. "Your sister is something else," she commented. "She told us you guys are loaded, said your dad owns some big company back home." I stared at her in confusion. "That's not true. My dad is a high school science teacher." Aubrey looked surprised. "Oh, she said you guys own multiple vacation homes and were thinking of buying property up here." The realization that Melissa was lying to impress these people added another layer to my frustration. When Aubrey rejoined the group outside, I heard Troy's voice carrying through the open deck door. "So, when are you going to cook that fancy dinner you promised us, Mel?" "I'm starving." Melissa's reply was clearly audible. "Olivia will make something for everyone. She loves playing house mother. It's her whole personality." That was when I reached my breaking point. I walked onto the deck, where the four of them were lounging, drinks in hand, while Dad sat uncomfortably at the edge of the group. "Melissa," I said, my voice tight with controlled anger, "can I speak with you inside, please?" She rolled her eyes dramatically for her friends' benefit. "Whatever it is, just say it here, Finnegan." "I'm not cooking dinner for your friends," I stated. "In fact, I think they should leave. Mom isn't feeling well. Their noise is disturbing her rest, and frankly, they've been disrespectful since they arrived." Jake sat up straighter. "Whoa, that's harsh. We're just having a good time at our family cabin during our family vacation, while my mother, who has health issues, is trying to rest," I pointed out. "Melissa invited you without consulting anyone, and you've overstayed your welcome." Melissa jumped to her feet. "You don't get to decide who's welcome here. This is Dad's cabin rental, not yours." Dad cleared his throat. "Actually, Olivia has a point. It is getting late, and your mother needs quiet." Melissa's face flushed with anger. "You're taking her side? After I finally made some friends who could show us the best parts of this place?" Troy stood up, swaying slightly. "No worries. We can tell when we're not wanted. Come on, Mel. Grab your stuff. You can crash at my place tonight." That suggestion created an entirely new problem. "Melissa, you're not going to a stranger's house to crash after drinking all day," I said firmly. "I'm 33 years old. You don't get to tell me what to do." Melissa shouted, loud enough that I was certain Mom could hear from inside. Dad finally took a stand. "Melissa, you're staying here tonight. Your friends need to leave." What followed was an ugly scene. Melissa alternated between arguing and pleading while her friends gathered their things with obvious annoyance. Jake muttered something about uptight family as he collected his speaker. Troy tried to convince Melissa to leave with them one more time, but Dad physically stepped between them, his teacher's authority finally making an appearance. After they departed, Melissa stormed to her room and slammed the door. Dad slumped into a deck chair, looking exhausted. I went inside to check on Mom, finding her sitting at the kitchen table, tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry about all that," I said, sitting beside her and taking her hand. "This isn't how I imagined our family vacation," she said softly. "I just wanted us all to spend time together and enjoy each other's company." As I comforted Mom, the weight of the past 4 days settled heavily on me. The pattern was clear. Melissa would continue to prioritize her own desires. Dad would enable her until pushed to the absolute limit. And Mom and I would be expected to accommodate and forgive without complaint. But for the first time, I was questioning whether I wanted to participate in this dynamic any longer. The morning of our 5th day dawned gray and drizzly, the weather matching the mood inside the cabin. Mom and Dad were having coffee when I emerged. Their conversation stopped abruptly. Melissa's door remained firmly closed. "Good morning," I said, pouring myself coffee and joining them. "How are you feeling today, Mom?" "Better after a full night's rest," she replied, a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The strain of yesterday was visible in her slumped shoulders. Dad cleared his throat. "I was thinking we could drive to that lighthouse today, the one in the guidebook. The rain's supposed to clear by noon." I nodded, appreciating his attempt to salvage something. "That sounds nice. The views are spectacular, and they have a small maritime museum." The tentative peace was shattered when Melissa finally emerged around 10 a.m., looking hungover but defiant. She poured coffee and leaned against the counter rather than joining us. "Morning," she said flatly. "What's the plan for today?" Dad explained the lighthouse idea, his tone carefully neutral. Melissa listened, sipping her coffee, then said, "Actually, I made other plans. Jake and Troy are picking me up at noon. They're taking me to this hidden beach only locals know about." The same people who had been asked to leave just last night were now expected to be welcomed back into her orbit. I exchanged a glance with Dad, who looked troubled but hesitant to create more conflict. "Melissa," Mom began gently, "we'd really like to do something as a family today. We've barely spent any time all together on this trip." "We've been together plenty," Melissa countered. "I'm allowed to have some fun on my vacation, too, you know." "Of course you are," Dad said placatingly. "But after yesterday..." "After yesterday, what?" Melissa interrupted. "After Olivia was rude to my friends and embarrassed me? After you kicked them out like they were criminals instead of people just trying to show us a good time?" Dad's placating approach clearly wasn't working. So I decided to be more direct. "After they disrespected Mom's health needs, drank excessively on our property, and left us to clean up their mess," I said. "Those people aren't friends, Melissa. You met them 3 days ago." Melissa rolled her eyes. Here we go again with Saint Olivia, the guardian of all things proper and responsible. Some of us actually know how to have fun and make connections with new people. "This isn't about fun," I replied, struggling to keep my voice level. "It's about respect for the family and consideration for Mom's needs. We came here for a family vacation, and you've spent most of it avoiding us or bringing strangers into our space." "Oh, please," Melissa scoffed. "Mom is fine. You're just being controlling, as usual." Dad intervened. "Let's all calm down. Melissa, we would really appreciate it if you join us for the lighthouse today. Your friends can wait until tomorrow." Melissa hesitated, possibly because the request came from Dad. For a moment, I thought she might agree. Then her phone chimed. She checked it, and her expression hardened. "They're already on their way. I can't cancel now." "Yes, you can," I said. "You can text them back and explain that you're spending the day with your family." "I don't want to." Melissa shot back. "I want to go to this beach with people who are actually fun to be around." Mom's soft voice cut through the tension. "Melissa, honey, I've been looking forward to the lighthouse. I thought we could take some family photos there." The hurt in her voice was unmistakable. For a brief moment, Melissa looked conflicted. Then she squared her shoulders. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I already committed to this. They're bringing a picnic and everything. I'll do the lighthouse thing with you another day." "There won't be another day," I pointed out. "We're leaving in 2 days, and tomorrow is supposed to be stormy." "Well, that's not my fault, is it?" Melissa retorted. "Maybe you should have planned better." The unfairness of that statement, when I had done all the planning, was the final straw. Years of built-up resentment and frustration broke through my usual restraint. "I did plan," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to control it. "I planned this entire vacation while you did nothing. I researched activities that would work for Mom's health needs. I packed her medications and monitored her condition. I made restaurant reservations and scheduled tours. I even packed special foods that she can eat safely." Melissa looked taken aback by my outburst, but quickly recovered. "Nobody asked you to do all that. You just like controlling everything." "No," I countered, Years of unspoken thoughts finally finding voice. I do it because someone has to be responsible. And it's never going to be you, is it? Not when you were 16 and dad had to pick you up from parties where you were drunk. Not when you were 22 and mom and dad had to pay off your credit card debt. And not now, at 33, when you can't even be bothered to show up on time for family activities. Olivia, dad warned, but I was beyond stopping. Do you have any idea what mom's been through this year with her health? Do you know how scared she was when she was hospitalized in March? Of course you don't, because you sent flowers instead of visiting, then called for 5 minutes before you had to rush to a party. Melissa's face flushed. That's not fair. I live in Boston. I can't just drop everything every time mom has a health issue. I live an hour further away than you do. I pointed out. But I managed to be there. I always manage to be there, because that's what family does. So, I'm not family now? Melissa's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. You're family when it's convenient for you, I replied. When you need money, or a place to stay, or someone to listen to your latest drama. But when the family needs you, when mom needs you, you're nowhere to be found. Melissa turned to her parents, tears welling in her eyes, tears I recognized as her go-to tactic. Are you going to let her talk to me like this? Dad looked deeply uncomfortable. Olivia, that's enough. Your sister. No, it's not enough. I interrupted, something I rarely did with my father. For years, we've all tiptoed around Melissa's feelings while ignoring everyone else's. We make excuses for her selfishness. We clean up her messes. We rearrange our lives to accommodate her whims. And what has it gotten us? A family vacation where mom's health is jeopardized, dad's stressed, and I'm treated like a servant, expected to cook and clean for Melissa's random friends. Mom's quiet voice broke through my tirade. Olivia, please. I'm sorry, Mom, but it needs to be said, I continued, gentler now. I love all of you, but this dynamic isn't healthy for anyone. Melissa needs to hear that her actions affect others, especially you. Melissa's tears had turned to rage. You think you're so perfect, don't you? The responsible daughter, the good one. Well, guess what? Everyone is sick of your controlling, judgmental attitude. You don't get to dictate how I live my life or spend my vacation. No, I don't, I agreed. But when your choices directly impact mom's health and well-being, that's where I draw the line. Mom is fine, Melissa shouted. Stop using her health as an excuse to control everything. At that, Mom herself stood up. I am not fine, she said with unusual firmness. I haven't been fine for months. My blood sugar has been all over the place. I'm constantly tired, and I worry about every bit of food I put in my mouth. This vacation was supposed to be a chance for me to relax and enjoy my family, but instead, I've been stressed and anxious since we arrived. Melissa stared at Mom, momentarily speechless. Dad placed a hand on Mom's shoulder, but she gently shrugged it off. Diane, he began, using her name in that special way reserved for serious moments. No, Richard, Mom said. I need to say this. I love both my daughters equally, but Olivia is right about one thing. This vacation has become all about managing Melissa's needs and moods rather than enjoying our time together. Melissa's face crumpled. So, you're taking her side? After everything I've done to make this vacation fun? What exactly have you done? I asked incredulously. Name one thing you've contributed to this vacation besides stress and drama. I found this place. Melissa shot back. This was my idea. Finding a cabin online and then doing absolutely nothing to make it happen doesn't count as a contribution, I retorted. Dad paid for it. I booked it. Researched activities. Packed supplies. You ruined it is what you did, Melissa shouted. You've turned what should have been a fun family vacation into a military operation with your schedules and rules and judgment. You've made everyone miserable with your controlling behavior. Dad finally found his voice. Melissa, that's enough. Olivia has done nothing but try to make this vacation work for everyone, especially your mother. If anyone has ruined things, it's... He cut himself off, but the implication was clear. Melissa gasped. genuinely shocked to hear her father come so close to blaming her. "I can't believe this," she said, her voice suddenly small. "My entire family is turned against me." "No one is turned against you," I said wearily. "We just want you to grow up and think about someone besides yourself for once." The sound of a boat motor approaching our dock broke the tense silence that followed. Melissa's phone chimed. "That's Jake and Troy," she said, her voice cold. "I'm going with them. Don't wait up." "Melissa, please." Mom called as she headed for the door. "Stay and talk this through." "There's nothing to talk about," Melissa replied without turning around. "Olivia has made her feelings clear, and apparently you all agree with her. I know when I'm not wanted." With that dramatic exit line, she stormed out of the cabin. Through the window, I could see her hurrying down to the dock where the now familiar motorboat was waiting. Jake waved enthusiastically, unaware of the family drama he was intersecting. After Melissa departed, the cabin fell into a heavy silence. Mom sank back into her chair, utterly drained. Dad paced the living room, running his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd rarely seen from him. "I'll make some fresh coffee," I said, needing something practical to do with my hands. As I measured the grounds, Dad came to stand in the kitchen doorway. "Did you mean what you said about leaving tomorrow?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without my voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Olivia," he said, the words coming out haltingly, as if he wasn't accustomed to saying them to me. "I didn't realize how much pressure you've been under." "It's not just this vacation," I replied, keeping my eyes on the coffee maker. "It's been our family dynamic for as long as I can remember." I just reached my breaking point. Mom joined us, her eyes red-rimmed, but dry now. "I should have seen it," she said softly. "I've leaned on you so much, especially since my diagnosis. It wasn't fair." "I don't mind helping, Mom," I assured her. "I love you, and I want to support you. What I mind is that it's always assumed I'll handle everything while Melissa gets a free pass to do whatever she wants." Mom reached for my hand. "I never meant to make you feel taken for granted." "I know you didn't," I said, squeezing her hand. "But that's what happened, and I need some space to figure out what comes next." The lighthouse trip was quietly abandoned. The three of us spent the afternoon in a strange, subdued state. I prepared a simple dinner, which we ate mostly in silence. The absence of Melissa's usual chatter and drama felt oddly conspicuous, like a missing tooth your tongue keeps finding. As I was cleaning up, Dad approached me hesitantly. "Are you sure about leaving tomorrow?" I nodded. "I need to. For me." "What should I tell Melissa?" The question irritated me, still worried about Melissa's feelings, even now, but I kept my tone neutral. "Tell her the truth. That I needed some space after our argument." Dad nodded, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "I've made a lot of mistakes with you girls," he admitted. "I thought I was being a good father by keeping the peace. But I was really just enabling bad patterns." The acknowledgement, however late in coming, meant something. "It's not too late to change those patterns, Dad." That night, I packed methodically, leaving out only what I'd need in the morning. As I folded clothes, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The decision to leave early was painful but necessary, a declaration of my own worth and needs that had been a long time coming. I went to bed early but lay awake for hours, listening to the lake at night, wondering if I was doing the right thing. Around midnight, I heard the distant sound of a boat motor. Melissa, returning, presumably. No voices or door slams, just the quiet click of her bedroom door closing. Morning came with pale sunlight. I dressed quickly, carried my bags to the car, then joined my parents for a final breakfast. Melissa's door remained closed. "I made your favorite blueberry pancakes," Mom said, her smile brave, but her eyes sad. "Thank you," I said, genuinely touched. We ate together, making stilted small talk. As I helped clear dishes, Melissa's door finally opened. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking subdued. "You're really leaving?" she asked, her voice lacking its usual edge. "Yes," I replied simply. "I think it's for the best." She nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Safe drive." It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't an attack either. It was almost conciliatory. The goodbyes were emotional but restrained. Mom hugged me tightly, whispering, "Call me when you arrive safely." Dad's embrace was awkward but heartfelt. Melissa hung back, offering only a stiff nod. As I drove away from the cabin, watching it recede in my rearview mirror, I felt a strange sense of both loss and liberation. For the first time in my adult life, I had chosen my own needs over family expectations. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to travel on my own terms. The small inn I found about 30 miles from our family cabin was nothing special. A standard roadside establishment with clean rooms and a view of pine trees rather than the lake. But it offered something I desperately needed: space to think. After checking in and carrying my single suitcase to the room, I sat on the edge of the bed and let the emotions I'd been controlling wash over me. Tears came hot and fast, a release of tension and grief for the family vacation that should have been, for the relationship with my sister I'd never truly had, for the years of feeling invisible despite always being needed. When the waves subsided, I took a long shower, ordered a pizza from the only delivery place in the area, and spent the evening watching mindless television. The simplicity was healing in its own way. No schedule to maintain, no one's needs to anticipate, no tension to navigate. I called Mom as promised to let her know I'd arrived safely. The conversation was brief but gentle, both of us carefully avoiding mention of Melissa or the argument. "Get some rest," Mom said before hanging up. "You deserve it." The next day, I slept later than I had in years, waking naturally around 9:30 a.m. without an alarm. After a leisurely breakfast at the inn's modest restaurant, I spent the morning catching up on work emails from my room. It wasn't exactly a vacation activity, but it felt productive and normal in a way the cabin experience hadn't. In the afternoon, I drove to a nearby state park and hiked alone, setting my own pace without worrying about accommodating anyone else. The solitude was refreshing rather than lonely. As I stood on a small overlook, watching a hawk circle lazily in the clear blue sky, I realized how rarely I experienced this kind of unstructured freedom, the ability to go where I wanted, when I wanted, answering only to myself. That evening, my phone rang with Mom's number. I answered immediately, a reflexive spike of worry cutting through my newfound peace. "Is everything okay?" I asked. "Yes and no," Mom replied, her voice strained. "I had a bit of a blood sugar issue this afternoon. Nothing too serious, but I was pretty shaky for a while." Concern flooded me. "What happened? Did you take your medication? Where was Dad? Is there a doctor nearby you can see?" "Olivia, breathe," Mom said gently. "I'm fine now." My blood sugar dropped suddenly. Probably from the stress of everything, to be honest. Your father helped me get some juice and crackers, and I stabilized. I wanted to hear your voice." The admission touched me deeply. "I'm glad you called. How are things otherwise?" Mom sighed. "Quiet. Your father took the boat out fishing. Melissa has been gone most of the day with those friends of hers." My jaw tightened. "Even after what happened? After your health scare?" "She doesn't know about it," Mom admitted. "She left before it happened, and we haven't seen her since." The old anger flared, but I tamped it down. "Mom, maybe you should come join me at this inn. It's not fancy, but it's comfortable, and I could take care of you properly." There was a pause before Mom responded. "That's very sweet, but I think I need to stay and see this through with your sister. Running away won't solve the underlying issues." Her words, though not intended as such, felt like a gentle rebuke of my own decision to leave. "I didn't run away," I said, more defensively than I intended. "I removed myself from a toxic situation." "Of course you did, honey," Mom said quickly. "And you were right to do it. I didn't mean to imply otherwise." We talked a while longer, Mom filling me in on Dad's fishing success and the family of loons they'd spotted. By the time we hung up, I felt both better for having talked to her and unsettled by the news of her health episode. The next morning, I woke early and found myself packing my bags without having consciously made the decision to return to the cabin. Something in Mom's voice the night before had triggered my protective instincts. Despite my determination to prioritize my own needs, I couldn't ignore the possibility that Mom might need me. I checked out of the inn and pointed my car back toward the lake, telling myself I was just going to check on Mom and could always leave again if the situation remained unchanged. The drive felt shorter this time, familiarity making the route seem more direct. As I pulled into the cabin's gravel driveway, I was surprised to see only Dad's SUV present. Melissa's rental car was nowhere in sight. I parked and sat for a moment, gathering my thoughts before heading inside. Dad answered my knock, surprise. Evident on his face. Olivia, we weren't expecting you back. I was worried about Mom after her blood sugar incident. I explained. Is she okay? Dad stepped back to let me in. She's better today. The doctor said it was likely a combination of stress and missing a meal. I stopped in the doorway. Doctor? You took her to a doctor? Dad nodded. I insisted after she nearly fainted yesterday. There's a medical center in town, the same one you researched before we came. They were very helpful. The fact that Dad had taken charge and followed through on getting Mom medical attention was unexpected but heartening. Where is she now? Resting in the bedroom. The doctor recommended taking it easy today. Dad hesitated, then added, She'll be happy to see you. I carried my bag inside and went directly to the master bedroom. Mom was propped up against pillows, reading a novel. Her face brightened when she saw me. Olivia, what a wonderful surprise. I sat on the edge of the bed and took her hand. I was worried after our call yesterday. How are you feeling? Much better, she assured me. Your father has been very attentive, and the doctor was wonderful. She adjusted my medication slightly, which seems to be helping. I glanced around. Where's Melissa? Mom's expression clouded slightly. She didn't come home last night. She texted her father this morning to say she was staying with her friend Aubrey. The information didn't surprise me, but it still stung to know that Melissa had essentially abandoned the family in the middle of a health crisis. Has she asked about you at all? I thought but didn't say. Instead, I asked, Have you eaten lunch yet? I can make you something. Your father brought me soup a little while ago, Mom said, then added with a small smile. It was from a can, but he heated it perfectly. The image of my father, who rarely ventured into cooking territory, carefully preparing canned soup for my mother, brought an unexpected lump to my throat. Perhaps my departure had forced some necessary changes in the family dynamic already. I spent the afternoon keeping Mom company, catching her up on my brief solo adventure and listening to her stories about Dad's fishing exploits. She seemed genuinely more relaxed than she had been earlier, despite her recent health scare. I had a good talk with your father after you left, she confided when Dad stepped out to buy more ice. I told him some hard truths about how I felt he was enabling Melissa all these years. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was necessary. How did he take it? I asked, genuinely curious. Better than I expected, Mom admitted. I think seeing you stand up for yourself shocked him into reconsidering some things. He admitted he's been unfair to you and far too permissive with Melissa. The acknowledgement was validating even secondhand. Do you think anything will actually change? Mom squeezed my hand. Change doesn't happen overnight, especially with patterns as old as these. But I believe we've taken the first steps. Early evening brought the sound of a car in the driveway. Looking out, I saw Melissa's rental. She entered the cabin alone, stopping short when she saw me sitting with Mom. You're back, she said, her tone unreadable. Mom had a health scare yesterday, I replied, not bothering to soften the information. Her blood sugar dropped dangerously low. Dad had to take her to a doctor. Melissa paled visibly. What? Why didn't anyone call me? Would you have answered? I asked. Or were you too busy with your new friends to care about your family? Olivia, Mom warned gently. Melissa's expression cycled rapidly through shock, guilt, and defensiveness. I would have come back if I'd known, she insisted. Is she okay? Are you okay, Mom? I'm fine now, Mom assured her. Just tired. The doctor adjusted my medication. Melissa approached hesitantly and perched on the arm of the couch near Mom. I'm sorry I wasn't here. The apology seemed genuine, which caught me off guard. I had expected more defensiveness, more deflection of responsibility. Mom patted Melissa's hand. "You're here now." Dad returned with the ice and groceries, pausing briefly when he saw Melissa, but offering a neutral greeting. The four of us existed in an awkward truce for the remainder of the evening. Everyone careful with their words, the recent conflicts hovering unspoken in the air between us. After dinner, which I prepared while Dad insisted on handling the dishes, Melissa approached me on the deck, where I'd gone for some fresh air. "I didn't know Mom was sick," she said without preamble. "I would have come back." "I believe you," I replied, surprising myself with the realization that I did. Melissa could be selfish and thoughtless, but she loved Mom in her own way. Melissa leaned against the railing, looking out at the lake. "I've been thinking about what you said about me never taking responsibility, always expecting everyone to accommodate me." I stayed silent, giving her space to continue. "I'm not good at being reliable," she admitted. "Not like you. It's easier to be the fun one, the spontaneous one. No one expects anything from me except entertainment." "That's not entirely true," I said. "Mom and Dad expect you to be an adult who considers others, especially when it comes to Mom's health. And I expect you to be a sister who sees me as a person with needs, not just a convenient resource to handle whatever you don't want to deal with." Melissa nodded slowly. "I can see how I've been taking advantage. Not intentionally, but the result is the same." She turned to face me directly. "I can't promise I'll suddenly become as responsible as you overnight, but I am sorry for how I've treated you, especially on this trip." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was more self-awareness than Melissa had ever demonstrated. "Thank you for saying that." "So, where do we go from here?" she asked. "One day at a time," I replied, starting with finishing this vacation with as little drama as possible for Mom's sake. The final 2 days of our family vacation passed in a state of cautious reconciliation. Melissa actually joined us for meals and activities, though she did slip away once to say goodbye to her local friends. More significantly, she made an effort to help with Mom, offering to get her medications or asking if she needed anything before disappearing to her room. Dad, too, showed subtle but meaningful changes. He consulted me about activities suitable for Mom rather than automatically deferring to Melissa. He stepped up with practical tasks without being asked. And most importantly, he began to hold Melissa accountable for her commitments, giving her a pointed look when she was late for breakfast on our final day. On the morning of our departure, as we packed the cars, Mom pulled me aside for a private moment. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For having the courage to speak your truth, even when it was painful. Sometimes a family needs a disruption to see the patterns they're trapped in." I hugged her tightly. "I'm sorry I left you." "Don't be," she insisted. That act of self-respect did more to change things than years of silent accommodation ever could. The drive home was split between the two cars. Dad and Mom in the SUV, Melissa and I in her rental. The arrangement, suggested by Dad, forced Melissa and me to spend several hours in close quarters, navigating conversation without the buffer of our parents. It was awkward at first, but gradually we found our way to more honest communication than we'd had in years. Melissa admitted feeling jealous of my closeness with Mom, especially since her health issues began. I confessed to resenting her freedom and the way she seemed exempt from family responsibilities. "I've always admired how together you are," Melissa said at one point, surprising me. "You make adulting look effortless." Laughed. "Trust me, it's not. I'm constantly worried I'm doing it wrong." "You worried about doing something wrong?" she teased. I thought that was my department. The shared laughter felt like the beginning of something new. Not a complete resolution, but a crack in the wall that had grown between us. Back home, the changes that began at the lake continued to unfold gradually. 3 months later, we gathered for family dinner at Mom and Dad's. Mom's health had stabilized, and she looked better than she had in months. The most remarkable change was in our family dynamic. Dad consulted me about important decisions rather than automatically deferring to Melissa. Mom was more forthright about her needs. And Melissa, while still Melissa in many ways, made visible efforts to be more considerate, calling mom regularly and even remembering dad's birthday without a reminder. As for me, I discovered that speaking up for myself didn't cause the family to fall apart, as I had feared. If anything, it strengthened us by replacing unhealthy patterns with more honest communication. I began setting clearer boundaries around my time and energy, and to my surprise, my family largely respected them. The vacation that I thought had been ruined turned out to be transformative in ways I never expected. By standing up for myself, even when it meant being cast as the villain temporarily, I had initiated necessary changes that benefited everyone. The pain and conflict had been worth it for the healthier family dynamic that emerged. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to love yourself enough to demand respect. That setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential for authentic relationships. And most importantly, that it's never too late to change family patterns that no longer serve anyone well. Our main vacation wasn't the idyllic experience I had planned, but it gave us something more valuable, a new understanding of each other, and the courage to create healthier ways of being family. In the end, that was worth more than any perfect vacation could have been. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself with family, even when it made you temporarily the bad guy? Tell me what you think. I really want to know. Share your experience in the comments below.